talk about designing for social media, we're not necessarily talking about creating the next Facebook. Rather, we're looking at how to leverage the rich infrastructure that social media provides in order to realize other goals across different design sectors, to design new services, strategies, and products that make use of social media. This is where we get into a more practical part of this module, where I'll be talking about some of the techniques that we can use to do this. These are mostly drawn from the areas of user experience design and interaction design that we discussed earlier on. I'll start with a technique that has an extremely broad scope, user journey mapping. When we create a user journey map, we attempt to describe every important step of a complex experience, including what the user is doing, thinking, and feeling at that moment, and what infrastructure is supporting them in the background. It's often used when designing complex services like banking, for example, or healthcare, or public transport. Any experience that has multiple dimensions and many moments of physical or technological engagement. These moments are referred to as touchpoints. For example, when I decide to open a new bank account, I could do this in different ways. I could go into the bank and talk to someone in person. I can hop online to open my account. Or I could phone the bank and arrange it over the telephone. The bank has to be ready to give its customers a seamless experience, no matter which of these avenues they choose. Depending which one I take, there will probably be some extra steps. I might have to create an online profile or come into the branch to identify myself. This process needs to be seamless, with information being carried over from every step in a logical way. The user needs to understand where they are in the process and what they need to do next. To design this is no easy job, which is why there are many examples of services that are messy and illogical. A user journey map is a visual representation of an experience, and its form is approximately based on a table. The columns are used to represent phases or specific activities, and the rows, or channels, are used to represent different dimensions of the experience. For example, what the user is doing and what the bank is doing. These channels can also be used to show different modes of engagement. For example, whether the interaction is taking place using a computer, a phone, a person, or an app. By mapping the experience on these two dimensions, we can look at what it is like for the user across all of the phases, and what kind of infrastructure needs to be designed in order for them to achieve their goals smoothly. Many user journey maps also include emotional dimensions, by looking at how the user feels during different activities or phases. This approach helps to minimize pain points, or to increase the joy in simple activities by designing them in a more supportive and humanistic way. At a certain point, we need to start designing the individual touchpoints, the key moments of engagement with an experience. This could be, for example, a banking feature that allows people to send money to their friends using a social media platform. This design occurs on a much more granular level, and so this is where I'd like to introduce a second technique called wireframing. When people design for screens, they don't immediately start with the visuals and graphic elements. There's a whole phase that goes beforehand. In this phase, the designer thinks about the layout of the screen and the functionalities that will be required by the user to carry out their goals. They make sure these are laid out in the most logical way so that people can understand them and understand what they have to do next. A wireframe expresses these different functional elements of a screen interface using simple boxes and lines. This helps us to design the functionality and interaction without getting overly fixated on the appearance. Both of these are good techniques to consider if you want to start designing for social media. The user journey map helps you to think about how and where you integrate social media in larger processes or experiences, and wireframing helps you to lay out discrete on-screen elements of social media touchpoints.